Hello, and welcome to the Housing Choice Voucher Program Administrative Fee Formula Proposed Rule webcast. My name is Michael Dennis. I work in PIH's policy shop here in HUD headquarters. And I'm joined today by Jennifer Turnham of the Office of Housing Voucher Programs. The purpose of today's webcast is to provide you with a thorough understanding of the Administrative Fee Formula Proposed Rule that was published in the Federal Register on July 6, 2016. During this broadcast, we're going to review the components of the proposed rule, as well as highlight several areas where the proposed rule is specifically seeking public comment. The public comment period ends October 4th, 2016. It's very important to us that PHAs and other stakeholders provide us with your thoughts, your concerns, your suggestions, and ideas on the proposed rule so we can develop the best possible final rule moving forward. The PowerPoint slides that accompany this webcast are available on the Admin Fee Proposed Rule website, which we'll be talking about a little bit later in the broadcast. Should you have any questions about this webcast, please send them to our mailbox, which is adminfee_rule@hud.gov. And so without any further ado, let's get started with the presentation. I want to start by giving a little bit of background on the proposed rule and formula and why HUD is proposing to change the administrative fee formula at this time. The proposed rule and formula has its origins in the findings and recommendations of the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Fee Study. As many of you recall, the study was completed about a year ago and released in April of 2015. The study produced important data on the average cost of administering a housing choice voucher at a high-performing and efficient agency and how those costs vary across PHAs. Based on the cost measured for the 60 study sites, the study analyzed to what extent PHAs as a whole were under or overfunded by the current formula and what factors affected administrative costs. The main reason the study was undertaken has to do with administrative fee funding. At the time the study was first contemplated, there was significant skepticism that the current formula, which is essentially based on a percentage of the higher of the 1993 or 1994 FMR for PHA's market area, necessarily reflects the cost to administer the program, or that it produces fees that appropriately allocate the funding we receive for administrative fees among PHAs. And I think it is fair to say that skepticism still remains with us today. Consequently, HUD has had a difficult time in defending its budget requests for administrative fee funding, and administrative fees have been consistently prorated downward in order to stay within the funding amounts appropriated by Congress. This study, which was supported and partially funded by Congress, has three main objectives. First, to determine how much it costs to administer an efficient and effective HCV program. Second, to identify the main cost drivers that account for the variation in administrative costs among PHAs. And third, to develop a new administrative fee formula based on the study's findings. The study found that most PHAs do not receive enough administrative fee funding and that the current formula does not adequately reflect the actual cost of administering a high-performing and efficient program. In addition, it also determined that this is not simply a question of needing additional administrative fee funding, but that the method by which the current formula calculates fees for individual PHAs is very problematic. In other words, the current formula results in fees that in general underfunds most PHAs, but dramatically underfunds some PHAs when compared to other PHAs. By implementing a new fee formula based on the study, HUD will have a strong basis by which to request and defend sufficient funding for administrative fees and to calculate fees that are based on the PHA, program, and market characteristics that have been shown to have the greatest impact on HCV administrative costs. So how did HUD get from the study to the proposed rule? The proposed rule is primarily based on the recommendations of the study, but also takes into account stakeholder feedback that was received after the study was released. So we took several actions one study was published to communicate its findings. Initially, there was a public webcast, and HUD then conducted 7 listening sessions around the country with PHAs to, again, brief them on what the study found, talk about the study's recommended formula, and get feedback from those agencies. HUD posted a number of online tools to help PHAs and other stakeholders assess the impact of the study's recommended formula on their funding. And then we published a solicitation of comment in the Federal Register on June 26, 2015, specifically seeking public comment on all aspects of the study and the recommended formula. We received 95 comments in response to the solicitation. They primarily focused on the study's recommended formula variables. They also described and discussed in great detail concerns that the study recommended formula might have on PHA operations. HUD reviewed all of the comments we received, and on the basis of a lot of that feedback, we did make several significant modifications to the study's recommended formula, which Jennifer is going to talk about in detail as she takes us through the basics of the proposed rule formula. Jennifer?
Thank you, Mike. So the circles on this slide show the 6 variables that make up the proposed rule formula. These variables together capture program size, local wage and benefit levels, family characteristics, and jurisdiction size. I'm going to talk about each of the variables and how they fit together in detail in the next few slides. But before I do so, I just want to reiterate that these 6 variables reflect the administrative fee study's findings on the actual costs of operating a high-performing and efficient HCV program, and the study's findings on the factors that affect per-unit costs across PHAs. The 6 variables also do a better job in capturing the variation in HCV administrative costs than the current formula. The proposed formula explains 62% of the variation in per-unit costs across the PHAs in the study, compared to 33% for the current formula. This means that the fee rates produced by the proposed rule formula come much closer to matching actual PHA costs than the fee rates coming out of the existing formula. So the proposed rule formula is a better approximation of what it actually costs PHAs to operate the program compared to the existing formula, even at full funding. The existing formula, as Mike mentioned, is based on local housing costs in 1993, adjusted for wage inflation since then, and this does not have a strong relationship to the costs of operating the program. The costs of operating the program are much more closely related to the various PHA and program factors that the proposed formula is picking up. So let's dig a little more deeply into the changes that were made between the study recommended formula and the proposed rule. We modified 3 formula variables for the proposed rule, and these formula variables are the wage index, the variable that captures benefits costs, and the small area rent ratio, or SAR. The wage index variable is designed to capture how wages paid by PHAs to HCV staff vary by region. In the study's recommended formula, the wage index variable was based on metropolitan and non-metropolitan averages for wages in each state. HUD received feedback that using state averages put very high-cost areas at a disadvantage, and that data at a finer level of geography would be more representative of the actual wage conditions facing PHAs. In response to this feedback, the proposed rule measures wage variation using CBSA level data where available, rather than state averages. A CBSA is a community-based statistical area and is like an MSA. The second change we made was that the study recommended that the formula include a variable to capture how the benefits paid by PHAs to HCV staff vary from region to region. The study formula had recommended a state-level index based on private employer health insurance costs as a proxy for how the benefits that PHAs pay vary from state to state. HUD received feedback that an index based on health insurance costs would not capture the full range of benefits that PHAs have to pay, particularly pensions. And so in response to this feedback, the proposed rule measures variation in benefits using actual data that PHAs report to HUD on the benefits costs for HCV staff. Third, the study had tried to identify a variable that would capture the costs associated with PHA efforts to expand housing opportunities. The study recommended the SAR, the small area rent ratio, which measured the share of a PHA's households that live in relatively more expensive parts of the metro area where the PHA is located. Commenters expressed concern that the SAR reflects a PHA's location and jurisdiction within the metro area more than the PHA's actual efforts to expand housing opportunities. HUD opted to eliminate the SAR from the proposed rule because of these concerns and because the variable was not reliably statistically significant. Another important change that was made between the study's recommended formula and the proposed rule is that the proposed rule includes an implementation strategy designed to protect PHAs from large declines in fee rates from one year to the next. Specifically, the proposed rule recommends that per unit fees may not decrease by more than 5% from one year to the next and may not increase by more than 40% from one year to the next. And the reason for capping the increase at 40% per year is to ensure that there are sufficient resources to hold the decliners to a maximum 5% decline. So, in other words, a PHA's per unit fee cannot be less than 95% of the per unit fee the PHA was paid last year. As an example, in the first year of implementation of the new formula, no PHA would receive a per unit fee that is lower than 95% of the fee that it received in the prior year under the existing formula, adjusted for inflation. Once the new formula is in place, no PHA would receive a per unit fee that is lower than 95% of the per unit fee it received in the prior year, adjusted for inflation. In the event of insufficient appropriations, HUD could cap gains at a lower percentage, for example 20% as compared to 40%, in order to prevent declines of more than 5%. And the proposed rule also seeks comment on how to handle other funding scenarios. For example, if appropriations are so low that all PHAs would experience a decline. So how does the formula calculation work? There are two terms that we use a lot in describing the formula, and those terms are values and coefficients. Each PHA has its own values that are unique to the PHA for each of the 6 formula variables. The data for these PHA values comes from HUD's VMS, PHAs, and PIC systems, and from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they're updated each year for each PHA. The formula also sets a maximum and minimum value for each of these values based on the range observed in the HCV administrative fee study. Each variable has a coefficient, and this represents the variable's weight in the formula, and it applies to all PHAs. And the coefficients were determined by the study's regression formula. So the PHA's base fee essentially is the sum of each variable value for the PHA times the coefficient, minus the regression model intercept, which I'll talk about in slides to come. And then the base fee is subject to the formula's fee floors and ceilings and adjusted for inflation before it becomes final. So each of these elements will be discussed in the slides to come. So I'm going to start by describing each formula variable and highlighting the areas where the proposed rule is seeking comment from the public. So we'll start with the program size variable, which provides additional fees for smaller PHAs based on the study finding that PHAs with 500 vouchers or fewer have higher per unit costs. The coefficient value for this variable is $13.94, and the PHA values can range from 0 to 1. So PHAs with 250 or fewer vouchers have a value of 1. PHAs with more than 750 vouchers or more have a value of 0. And PHAs with between 250 and 750 vouchers have a value that's between 1 and 0, with the calculation for that is explained in the proposed rule. So the minimum a PHA can receive for this variable is 0, and the maximum is $13.94. And the PHA values are updated each year based on the last 12 months of VMS data. So in addition to describing the program size variable, the preamble to the proposed rule asks for comment on 3 specific questions related to the variable. And these questions are shown in the blue box. So first we ask, should the size of the coefficient be reduced so that program size has less impact on per unit fees? Second, we ask, should the size thresholds be changed so that some of the upward fee adjustments accrues to PHAs with more than 750 vouchers? And third, should the formula be modified to not discourage very small PHAs with adjoining or overlapping jurisdictions from consolidating or forming consortia? The next variable is the wage index variable, which provides additional fee for PHAs located in high-wage areas. As we discussed a few slides back, this variable was modified from the study formula in response to comments received that the study's approach of using state averages disadvantaged PHAs located in more expensive markets. The data source for this variable is the Bureau of Labor Statistics Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages, or QCEW. And the coefficient value is $31.53. PHA values for this variable can range from 0.64 to 1.46 based on the range observed. This is an index variable, so the national average is a value of 1, and each PHA gets a value relative to the national average. We use CBSA level data for PHAs in metro areas, and state average data is used for PHAs in non-metro areas where CBSA level data is not available. So based on the minimum and maximum values and the coefficient value, PHAs can receive a minimum of $20.18 and a maximum of $46.03 for this variable. The PHA values are updated each year based on the most recent annual QCEW data. And on this variable, HUD is specifically seeking comment on whether the proposed approach adequately captures variation in local labor market costs. Next is the benefit load variable, which provides additional fee for PHAs in states with high benefit costs relative to salaries. This variable was changed from the study formula, which used a state health insurance cost index as a proxy for local variations in benefits costs. Commenters suggested that the state health insurance cost index did not reflect the full range of PHA benefits costs, especially pension contributions. The coefficient value for this variable is 0.78, 78 cents, and the PHA values range from 22.56 to 60.48. The values are calculated at a state level and represent the sum of the benefits paid to HCV employees divided by the sum of all salaries paid to HCV employees. So it's a state average of HCV benefits costs as a percent of salary costs. And the source of the data is the information that PHAs report to HUD via the PHAs system. PHAs can receive a minimum of $17.60 for this variable and a maximum of $47.17. The state averages are updated each year based on the most recent 3 years of data. So this variable is calculated as a 3-year average, and that's to avoid creating swings in fees from year to year. So this is a new variable that was not in the study's recommended formula, so HUD is specifically asking for comment on whether the variable adequately captures the variation in benefits costs or whether there may be an alternative measure that would be preferable. The earned income variable provides additional fees for PHAs serving a high percentage of households with earned income. The administrative fee study found that serving working families increases PHA administrative costs. This is because working families have more complicated income calculations and more often require interim recertifications and move more often than families with fixed incomes. The data source for this variable is the PHA's PIC data, and the PHA values can range from 15.58% to 56.11%. The coefficient value is $1.02. So this means that PHAs can receive a minimum of $15.89 for the variable and a maximum of $57.23. And the PHA's value would be updated each year based on the most recent 3 years of PIC data. And like the benefits load variable, we do a 3-year average for this variable to avoid large swings in fee from year to year. After the study was released, some commenters suggested that this variable rewards PHAs that serve working families to the detriment of PHAs that serve a large population of elderly and disabled, or are focused on serving the homeless. This variable is designed to compensate PHAs for the extra costs associated with serving working families, not to reward PHAs for serving those families. However, HUD is specifically asking for comment on whether the size of the fee adjustment associated with this variable should be reduced. HUD is also asking whether the variable should be modified to ensure that PHAs do not have a disincentive to serve non-working families, for example, homeless families. Finally, HUD is interested in any comment on whether the variable should be entirely removed from the formula, despite the strong finding from the study that serving working households costs more money. The new admissions variable provides additional fees for PHAs with a high percentage of new admissions, either from turnover or new voucher allocations. The data source for this variable is the PHA's own PIC data, and the variable is calculated as a 3-year average, just like the households with earned income variable and the benefit load. The coefficient value for this variable is 15 cents, and PHA values range from 2.93% to 52.19%. So PHAs receive a minimum of 44 cents for this variable and a maximum of $7.83. And for this variable, HUD is requesting comment on how the variable should treat port-in households. Specifically, HUD is seeking comment on whether HUD should count households that port in without being absorbed as new admissions for the purposes of the formula variable. And this would boost the new admission rates for some PHAs that serve a lot of port-ins. So the final variable in the proposed formula is the 60 miles variable, which provides additional fee for PHAs serving households that live more than 60 miles from the PHA's headquarters. The data source for this is the PHA's own PIC data, measuring the shortest distance between each household's address and the PHA's headquarters using latitudes and longitudes. The PHA value is updated each year based on 1 year of PIC data. The coefficient for this variable is 83 cents, and the PHA values range from 0 to 47.39%. So PHAs can receive a minimum of $0 for this variable and a maximum of $39.33. It should be noted that most PHAs do not serve any households further than 60 miles from their headquarters, so most PHAs get no extra fee for this variable. Some commenters on the study suggested that the variable is overly generous to state agencies, and others said that the measurement may underestimate distance because it doesn't take into account roads or traffic. So HUD is specifically seeking comment on whether the distance should be measured using road distance or some other method, and whether the variable should take into account where households are clustered geographically, irrespective of where the headquarters may be located. So this slide pulls together all the variables and shows how the formula calculation works, with actual variable values for hypothetical PHA and the formula coefficients. So for each formula variable, we multiply the PHA's value on the variable by the coefficient, and that produces the fee amounts shown in the far right column. These numbers are then summed up, and we subtract the formula intercept of $33.47. Now, the intercept does not make a lot of intuitive sense, but it is required to make sure that the formula coefficients add up to the correct fee amount. The value of the intercept for the proposed rule is negative 33.47, which essentially means that if the value of all the other variables was 0, the fee per month, per unit month, would be negative $33.47. Now, obviously, this makes no sense, but it would never happen in practice because several of the variables can never have a value of 0. So the intercept is simply part of the statistical model that underlies the formula. The calculation shown on this slide, which is the sum of each variable value times its coefficient minus the intercept, creates a base fee per unit month, which on this slide is shown as $69.78. Now, the base fee will then need to be inflated because the coefficients used to calculate this fee come from the admin fee study data and are in 2013 dollars. The base fee is also subject to fee floors and ceilings and caps on gains and declines that I discussed earlier, and we're going to go through those steps again. So what are the fee floors and ceilings that I mentioned? The proposed formula recommends floors and ceilings based on the actual costs that were measured through the administrative fee study. And the formula applies these floors and ceilings before adjusting for inflation. So the fee floor is $42 per unit month leased for PHAs located outside of the U.S. territories and $54 per unit month leased for PHAs in the U.S. territories. The higher fee floor for PHAs in the U.S. territories was recommended by the study. The study sample didn't include any PHAs in the territories, but recommended that these PHAs receive higher fees because of higher non-labor costs in these areas that may not be captured by the formula. The fee ceiling is $109 per UML, based on the highest cost PHA in the study. So for most PHAs, the formula itself produces fees that are both higher than the fee floors and lower than the fee ceilings. Only 62 PHAs would receive the fee ceiling, and only 66 PHAs, and these are mostly in the U.S. territories, would receive the fee floor, based on a 2015 calculation. As I've mentioned a couple times, each year the formula is adjusted for inflation. This inflation adjustment is necessary because the coefficients in the formula are based on the study's cost data and are in 2013 dollars. The inflation factor proposed for the formula is a national factor. That is, the same inflation factor is applied to all PHAs. The reason it's a national factor is that the formula itself already picks up local variations in wage and benefits costs. The proposed inflation factor is a blended rate that measures inflation in both labor and non-labor costs. 70% of the inflation factor reflects inflation in wages and benefits, as captured by the Employer Cost for Employee Compensation Survey, and 30% of the inflation factor reflects inflation in goods and services, as captured by the Consumer Price Index. This 70-30 split in the blended inflation factor reflects the findings of the administrative fee study that, on average, approximately 70% of PHA's HCV administrative costs are labor, and approximately 30% are non-labor costs. Through the proposed rule, HUD is seeking comment on all aspects of this proposed inflation factor, including whether it should be calculated at a national or a regional level. So let's recap how the proposed formula works. First, we calculate a base per unit fee using the formula's coefficients and the PHA values for the formula variables. Next, we apply the floor and ceiling fee rates to ensure that the per unit fee rate is between $42 and $109 per unit month. Third, we apply the inflation factor to inflate this per unit fee rate to present day dollars. And then finally, we will adjust the fees as needed to ensure that no PHA's per unit fee is less than 95% of the fee it received the previous year, or more than 140% of the fee it received in the previous year. This is the implementation strategy I mentioned earlier in the presentation. And this produces a final per unit fee rate that would apply to all non-ported vouchers under lease and to port-in vouchers under lease. And I want to spend just a minute on portability because the proposed fee formula handles portability in a different way than the admin fee formula that's currently in place. And this is based on the recommendations of the administrative fee study. So the proposed formula recognizes that PHAs spend as much time administering port-in vouchers that come from other PHAs as they do their own vouchers. The proposed formula also recognizes that PHAs do spend some time on port-out vouchers that are administered by other PHAs, largely because of the ongoing billing for HAP funds. Under the proposed rule formula, the PHA would earn 100% of its fee for non-ported vouchers and for port-in vouchers. It would also earn 20% of its fee rate for port-out vouchers that it administers administered by other PHAs. So for non-ported and port-in vouchers, the PHA earns fees equal to 100% of its per unit rate multiplied by the number of unit months under lease. For port-out vouchers, the PHA earns fees equal to 20% of its per unit rate multiplied by the number of port-out unit months under lease. So in this way, the proposed rule formula eliminates billing for administrative fees, though billing for HAP remains. The proposed rule invites comment on the use of supplemental fees to support HUD objectives and PHA objectives. Specifically, the rule invites comments on supplemental fees for special purpose vouchers, for example, HUD VASH, for serving homeless households, and for expanding housing opportunities, for example, through mobility counseling or investment in employment and self-sufficiency initiatives. So HUD is looking for feedback on what aspects of program administration should be compensated or incentivized through supplemental fees versus the core formula, and what the amount and structure of those fees should look like. I'm now going to turn it over to Mike to talk about the impact of the formula on PHAs.
Thank you, Jennifer. So in this slide, we're going to talk about the impact of the proposed formula on PHAs, basically looking at the funding levels and fee rates for the proposed rule formula and the existing formula for calendar year 2015. And we're focusing our analysis on calendar year 2015 because it is the most recent year for which we have a full year of fee data under the existing formula. Note that this slide does not include costs for MTW agencies. HUD anticipates that the new fee formula would apply to those MTW vouchers that currently receive administrative fees through the regular formula, which is largely special purpose vouchers. But because each MTW agency is funded according to its MTW agreement, we do not estimate a total admin fee cost for MTW agencies in this presentation. So had the proposed rule formula been in place in calendar year 2015, our estimate is the total administrative fee cost for non-MTW PHAs would have been approximately $1.67 billion. Now this compares to the $1.39 billion that HUD actually paid out in administrative fees and the $1.71 billion, which is the total fee eligibility under the existing formula, again, in 2015. So the proposed rule formula for 2015 comes out to roughly 97–98% of the fee eligibility under the current formula. As we discussed earlier, HUD's goal in implementing the new formula is to be able to advocate successfully with HUD's appropriators for sufficient funding for administrative fees and to allocate those fees across PHAs in a way that better reflects each individual PHA's costs. So although the new formula suggests a similar level of overall funding to the fee eligibility under the current formula, the study's findings do not support that we simply fully fund the current formula. That would fail to address the serious problem the study found with how funding is currently allocated among PHAs, which again is based primarily on FMRs from over 20 years ago as opposed to actual cost drivers. So what this translates to in terms of percentages of gainer and decliner PHAs is that 89% of non-MTW PHAs would have had higher per unit fees in 2015 under the new formula than the per unit fees they actually received under the current formula. And again, that is looking at the fees under the current formula after proration. And 64% of PHAs would have had higher per unit fees in 2015 under the new formula as opposed to their 2015 fee eligibility, which again would be had we received appropriations sufficient to fully fund the current formula. We still have, again, 64 PHAs that would have received higher fees under the study or the proposed rules formula. So on this slide, we're going to compare the average fee rate per PHA from the proposed formula to the average fee rate per PHA from the current formula, again using calendar year 2015 by program size. The slide also shows the share of PHAs that are decliners in each size category. And again, a PHA is considered a decliner if the per unit fee that it would have received in 2015 under the proposed rule formula is lower than the per unit fee it actually received in 2015 under the current formula. Again, in other words, a decliner PHA is a PHA that would have earned less fee under the proposed rule formula than it did under the current formula after that fee was prorated. Overall, 11% of PHAs are decliners under the proposed rule formula. The share of decliners varies by program size, with PHAs between 500 and 5,000 vouchers most likely to be decliners. So I think that begs the question, why are some PHAs decliners under the proposed rule formula? And there are really two main factors that determine whether a PHA will be a decliner or a gainer under the proposed rule formula. The first, I think, is quite evident, and it is the PHA's own values on each of the 6 formula variables, which predict the per unit fee it will get under the proposed rule formula. As you can see from this table, PHAs that are decliners on average have lower values on all 6 formula variables, resulting in a fee that is about $6 per month lower than non-decliner PHAs. The second factor that determines whether a PHA will be a decliner under the proposed rule formula is the fee that the PHA receives under the existing formula. In general, the higher the fee under the existing formula, the more likely the PHA is to be a decliner under the proposed rule. As shown in the last row of the table, the average fee under the existing formula is about $13 per unit month higher for decliners than it is for non-decliners. That's the $69.02 amount for decliner PHAs compared to the 55.95 value for gainer PHAs. So this slide asks the question, what comments is HUD seeking? And again, I think Jennifer did a very nice job of pointing out a number of these comments. I think the easiest way to answer this first off is to say, any and all comments that you may have, we want to encourage you to comment on any aspect of the proposed rule you believe merits a comment. We obviously really want to hear what you think we got wrong or need to change, but to the extent there are aspects of the rule you particularly support, it is also helpful for HUD to hear that as well. The proposed rule does highlight a number of areas where HUD is specifically seeking comment. For instance, as Jennifer had mentioned, pretty much on every formula variable, the rule is seeking comment on how that variable is defined and how the PHA values are defined, including the minimum and maximum values. The rule also seeks specific comment on the fee floors and ceilings, We want to know your thoughts on the inflation factor. We received a number of comments and feedback on implementation in terms of what do we do in the event of insufficient appropriations. So we would like to hear, again, from the public, from PHAs, from stakeholders on those aspects of the proposed rule. And again, as Jennifer mentioned, supplemental fees for the homeless initiatives, for special vouchers, for expanding housing opportunities, PHA performance, other topics or subjects or areas that may be out there that you think, again, would warrant inclusion either in the base formula or through a supplemental fee. Please do share that with us. In terms of how to submit comments, I think the most important takeaway from this slide is the due date, which is October 4th, 2016. So we have an extended comment period for this rule. Typically, comment periods are 60 days. This rule has a 90-day comment period. We realize it's a relatively lengthy rule and a relatively complex rule, so we want to give ample opportunity for people to provide us comments. So again, that due date is October 4th, 2016. You can submit comments through one of two ways. Probably the best way, I think, is electronically through the federal e-rulemaking portal at www.regulations.gov. But you can also submit comments by mail, and you can see the address there on the screen. The proposed rule also has information on how to submit comments. There are several resources that contain more information on this proposed rule. We want to make sure, again, that we receive as much input as possible on the proposed rule, so we are trying to provide you with as many ways to understand and analyze the rule as we can. Hopefully, if you are viewing this webcast, you've already found our admin fee formula proposed rule page. But if not, if you've accessed this through some other source, you can find our webpage at the following address. The shortcut version is go.usa.gov/X3JKT, and that's X as in X-ray, 3, J as in John, K as in Kathy, T as in Tom. You can also access this webpage through the main HUD website, www.hud.gov. When you go to that page, across the top you'll see a drop-down box that allows you to go to program areas. If you click on that and then click on the Public and Needing Housing link, it will bring up the PIH homepage. Across the top of that page, there's a listing of PIH program areas. If you click on Housing Choice Vouchers, that will bring you to the Housing Choice Voucher webpage. And one of the first bullets that you will see on that webpage is the link to the admin fee proposed rule webpage. In terms of what is on our webpage, we have a number of different tools to try and help PHAs and other stakeholders in terms of analyzing the rule. We have a spreadsheet that provides data on every PHA's fee, or what the fee would have been if the proposed rule had been in place for 2015, compared again to the actual fee that those PHAs received. We have a separate spreadsheet that provides the same information using the study formula. So if HUD had not changed or amended the study's recommended formula, the spreadsheet would provide you information on what the fees would have been in 2015. These spreadsheets contain information on both non-MTW and MTW PHAs. So one of the concerns we heard when we put the study tools out was that MTW PHAs were unable to be able to access what their fees would have been, again, mainly in terms of administrative fees they would have received for special purpose vouchers. So we did try to correct that on these two spreadsheets. The third item is a tool that allows the users to compare the impact of the proposed rule formula on individual PHAs at different levels of funding. So if you enter the PHA code into that tool, it will bring up the information for that individual PHA, and then it will allow you to make adjustments you can adjust the amount that the actual 2015 funding was prorated. So if you want to say, I want to compare how my PHA would have done compared to the current formula if it was fully funded in calendar year 2015, you can change that 81.5% proration factor to 100%. There's also a way that you can change and work on, well, what if HUD hadn't received sufficient appropriations to fully fund the proposed rule? You can prorate the proposed rule fee that the PHA would receive and use that to make your comparisons as well. One drawback for this tool is it is at this time is not operational for MTW PHAs, so if you enter into an MTW PHA code, you'll get an invalid code message. So again, for MTW information, you really need to look at the Excel spreadsheet that's provided for all the PHA's data for 2015 using the proposed rule formula. The last thing that that tool does that I would highlight is it provides, I think, what is a useful picture of how the PHA's values come into play in calculating their per unit fee. So there is a calculation that is done for the PHA whose code that you have entered, and you can see how the various formula variables work for that PHA to calculate their per unit fee. And last but not least, we have a link to the proposed rule itself. There is also a link to information on the HCV administrative fee study. If you want to go back and refresh your memory about that study, how you can get to that study is through this web page. And finally, the email address is there. Again, if you have any questions, either on this webcast or about the proposed rule or about any of the tools that we placed on the web page, please email us directly at adminfee_rule@hud.gov. We'll do our best to respond to those questions in 2 to 3 business days, if at all possible. Please note that this email address is limited to questions about the proposed rule. It is not a means of submitting public comment. The only way we can consider your public comments is if you submit them through the federal rulemaking portal, the www.regulations.gov, or submit them to the address in the proposed rule itself in terms of how to submit those comments. So last but not least, we want to talk about next steps. Again, comments are due October 4th, 2016. HUD will, once we get those comments, we'll review them. We'll start drafting the final rule. Realistically, our expectation at this point is that we'll have a final rule published probably in the late spring or early summer of 2017. And what that means is that our expectation of implementation for the new formula is now calendar year 2018. When the study first came out last year, we were hoping that we would get through rulemaking and be in a position where we could implement the new formula in 2017. Obviously, given the time it took us to develop the proposed rule, the extended comment period that we want to have for the proposed rule, and the fact we want to be very deliberative in our rulemaking and in our drafting of the final rule, 2017 is no longer a realistic implementation date. So again, this is really a key for us is to get our proposed rule or our final rule out in time where we could implement the new formula for calendar year 2018. This basically concludes our webcast on the HCV administrative fee formula proposed rule. Again, should you have any questions, please send them to us at adminfee_rule@hud.gov. On behalf of myself and Jennifer, thank you very much for taking the time to view this webcast. And please do submit comments to us so we can develop the best possible final rule moving forward. Thank you.